Welcome back to our next segment. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up audio subgroups and sort of an approach behind using audio subgroups on your console. So now I'm not talking about DCAs or VCAs. I'm talking about actual mix buses or actual audio subgroups on your mixer and how to use them correctly. And this concept actually helped me a lot when I learned this approach not too long ago, and it's really helped me in my workflow with mixing. So one of the things that becomes an issue sometimes, okay, let's say you have your gain level set really well, and let's just say it's your bass guitar, for example. Okay, so I got my bass guitar right here, and your input levels set correctly. We've got the right gain approach. Our input levels, averaging -18, for example, and then you bring up your fader, and let's say this is where the volume level feels right, and you're at -25 on the fader, way low. So what's the problem with that? Well, there is. The issue is that when you're down here, the resolution of the fader is too coarse of an adjustment. Like I move the fader, a tiny bit, and I'm adjusting 10 dB of level, or I'm adjusting, especially down here. When you get down here, this is a 10 dB move right here. This is a 10 dB move right here. So, and it gets even worse. So the problem is the mixers are not designed to, the faders are not designed to operate down here all the time. It's annoying because it's too coarse of an adjustment. So really it'd be better if we were up near unity, because now for me to go to +10 is a huge range of adjustments. So I could fine tune my mixing much easier on the fly by being closer to the unity gain. Okay? Well, the problem is you turn this up here now, the bass guitar is way too loud, right? So where do you address that? So some people will say, well, just turn the gain down. Well, if you turn your gain down, now you've lowered the resolution of your audio, and you've sacrificed and penalized yourself with the audio resolution. And so your quality has suffered. Well, what if you turned it down on a DCA? Well, if you did that, it's as if you're lowering the actual fader. Now, anything that's a post-fade send is also turned down by 10 or 20 dB. So you've penalized yourself on all your post-fade sends. So one of the approaches that I learned recently is using audio subgroups to make that offset, to make that listening level offset. So for example, if we were using bus 1, okay, I'm going to select bus 1 real fast. I need to probably reset everything on it because it wasn't used for this before. And I'm going to rename it, select this bus, and I'm going to rename this, and I'll call this bass group, okay? Or you can just call it bass if you want. And so on this group, I need to make sure I have this set up also to be a true subgroup. So I'm going to select my bus and then go to my home page, and let me make sure I got the right spot. Where's it at? There it is. And make this a true subgroup. So I'm going to change this whole thing to be a true subgroup. Now the whole thing is now a subgroup. And so I only want to send bass guitar to this group now. Okay, so I could hit sends on fader here, and I could quickly turn on bass guitar and make sure everything else is muted going to this group. Did I get it right? Okay, got it. And now I also need to do one more thing. Okay, so I need to make sure now that I'm not assigning the bass guitar directly to the main bus. So I'm going to take the bass guitar off of the main and mono bus, and I'm going to send the subgroup itself to the main bus. Okay, I'm using the mono bus for subwoofers. So now my bass guitar is not going to the main bus; it's going to the subgroup and then to the house or the main mix. So now I could actually do my offset right here on the subgroup. So I lower the subgroup to -20 or whatever. Now my input fader can reside right near 0, and I've made that offset for listening level on the subgroup. And this is the approach that works for pretty much anything. So what I've started doing recently is not assigning the vast majority of inputs on your console directly to your main left-right bus, but using subgroups to set listening levels and then assigning your subgroups to your main left and right bus. So, for example, you might do the same thing with drums, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing on bus 2. I'm going to make sure my bus is configured correctly. I'm going to go to configuration for that bus and select it as a subgroup, and it's now a subgroup. I'm going to rename the bus real fast, and let's say I'm going to rename that drum group, and I've renamed it. Now I need to make sure I have the drums sending to that. So I'm going to unmute the drums, sending to that group. And notice that I don't need to raise the faders up or anything. As long as I have this unmuted, it should be fine. It should automatically be going to the group. I mean, you could raise the faders up on this console anyway. It lets you, but it should automatically send when you unmute. So after I've done that, you can make another subgroup for the next thing. You may make a keys subgroup for all your keyboards, and then you could raise and lower that subgroup according to your listening level. So the important thing to understand, the important thing to remember here is that this subgroup is designed to set your listening level. So I need to make sure my main out is up at 0 at unity gain. I'm going to make sure that my channel as well, let's say for bass, just so I don't have to grab a bunch of faders, but bass channel is at 0, and then you have the bass player play and set your listening level till you feel like that's where the bass is probably going to sit in the mix. And then you could pretty much ignore that subgroup fader after that, and now you can mix with your bass guitar fader, and now you have that resolution in front of you. So this applies to everything else. Like I do that for drums, I'll do that for keys, I'll do it for tracks and loops and stuff, guitars as well, and then any kind of stereo instruments you would use 2 subgroups. So I would create a stereo subgroup. I'll show you how to do that real fast on the X32. So in this case, let's say I was going to make this a keys subgroup. So I'll do keys group, and actually this would be keys group left, and keys group right. Keys group left and keys group right. And now I want to link these two together, okay? So to do that, I just go to the home and hit link, and they're linked together now. Now they move together. So I want to also assign this to the left and right bus as well, and they should both be assigned by default. And if I wanted to send it to subs, I could send it to subs. That's just how I'm probably using this before. And now I want to pre-configure this bus to be a subgroup bus. Okay, notice I'm not using like a post-fade bus or pre-fader bus. I'm creating a subgroup bus. And the reason for that is that I don't want to create another place where I could change the level and the relationship of that instrument. I want it to operate like a true audio subgroup where I just assign it to the subgroup and the audio gets routed to it. It's simple and it works, and there's really no reason to start messing with it being a post-fader group if you don't have to. So after you do that, now you could start assigning stuff to that group. So I want to turn on, let's say I wanted to send main keys and I wanted to send organ and stuff. So I'll just bring those up just so they're up, so you can see kind of that those are the ones being sent anyway, even though they're subgroups and not post-fade groups. So now I need to double check that these are not assigned to the main left and right bus as well. Because what happens is if you're sending your input channel to the main bus and your subgroup, you're sending two things. You're sending it from both places, and that defeats the purpose of what you're doing. And it actually would just make it louder and cause phase issues by putting them in parallel, because there'll be a delay, a latency penalty by putting them in a bus anyway, by whatever samples or milliseconds it is. I don't know. So anyway, just assign it directly to the subgroup and assign your subgroup directly to your mains. Now you can set your listening level for all your keyboards to wherever you feel like is right, and now you're running your keyboards closer to unity. And so Now, in a service situation, just to kind of further reinforce and further clarify this, in a service situation, I'm not really referring to this subgroups and moving those around. You know, I'm back on my DCAs, and I'm mixing using the faders on the input channels. So I'm pretty much ignoring these subgroups. They're kind of in the background. There are times where I feel like I need to make a tweak to the subgroup because I'm kind of like need to readjust my listening level overall to give myself the correct range of headroom there. So I do that. But once you kind of get that dialed in, you're pretty much never going to have to refer to it anymore. Another thing that I sometimes do on audio subgroups, it allows you the ability to use compression on the subgroup. This is in particular comes in handy for things like a drum kit. You know, I compress the kick and the individual elements of the kit often somewhat. I'll use gating on the toms, and I'll use compression on the various inputs. But then it allows you to put a little extra compression on the whole subgroup on the kit, on the drum kit. And one of the things I've found with compressing the whole subgroup for the drum kit on the subgroup is that it helps the whole kit kind of like breathe together. It kind of glues the sound of the drums together, and it helps the kit to kind of breathe as one unit, as one sort of instrument in a way. So that's some of the ways that I utilize subgroups on the console. One last thing about subgroups that I do as well is I'll also send the effects for that instrument. So for example, if I'm using drum reverbs, I'll send that to the drum subgroup. So if I just hit Sends on Fader and I go to my drum verb return, okay, I'm going to send that as well to the drum subgroup, and I'm going to take that out of the left and right bus, okay. So now the drum subgroup is also containing the reverb for the drum, so it all operates kind of as one thing. And one of the advantages to that is that if you did lower the drum subgroup, if you did lower it, it also lowers the reverb with it. So that's a good thing. If it wasn't assigned there, if the drum verb was assigned directly to the left and right bus and not on the subgroup, that means if I raised or lowered this drum subgroup, my wet-dry relationship between reverberated drums and non-reverberated drums would be thrown off, because this does not affect the drum verb unless it's actually assigned here too, because I'm actually sending the drum verb, I'm sending these individual channels to the drum reverb, comes out, returns back into here. And so if I turn up the snare drum channel, I'm turning up the reverb with it because it's a post-fade send. But the subgroup does not do that. So that's one of the advantages of actually assigning the drum verb, sending the drum verb to that subgroup as well. The drum verb return is what I mean to say. So this is the actual return, the output of the reverb unit, the output of the effects processor is going to also go to your subgroup that you needed. So I do the same thing with vocals. And so anything you want to do it's one thing that's helped me a lot to not have to, like I said, run my faders really, really low, because I'm a big proponent of getting correct gain structure, like I said, about sound quality. So it allows me to not have to run my faders super low on stuff. It lets me run my faders much closer to zero and have that flexibility to adjust that. So that's my tip on using audio subgroups. Hope you enjoyed it.